All right, so ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by Mr. Tim Wright. Tim, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. How about you, Trevor?
Not too shabby. We're just doing some tweaking and whatnot with our video settings as they are causing problems at the beginning of every episode, it seems. But that's just the name of the game when it comes to technology. So Tim is joining us. He's our first official guest outside of our normal co-host Carter Johnson, who can't be here today. Unfortunately, they're doing a bunch of work on his house, so he's got hammers and stuff and drills in the background, and it would just be very distracting for the podcast. So we won't have him here, but we're having Tim sub in. And Tim, you're working right now for a software sort of development firm that focuses on UI and UX stuff. Is that correct?
Right. We're at Fresh Tilled Soil. We're an experienced design agency out of Boston. We do a lot of work on applications, so we're very, very piped into the Boston startup scene, and it's really, really interesting stuff.
Cool. And yeah, because I was like I was saying, my co-host Carter, he's out in Boulder. There's a huge scene there in Boulder for entrepreneurs and whatnot, and startups. And I visited him probably 2 years or so ago. And I remember I was chilling with him and a bunch of entrepreneurs, huge meetup of probably like 30 people, amazing energy, and we had random things that we were doing every day. But one of the things on one of the days was just it came out of nowhere. There was like some sort of startup like street party that was going on where all the businesses in the area were throwing like a party and opening their doors, and you could just basically walk into any of the offices and check out all these cool startup companies and stuff. So it's incredible. So I don't know if it's to that extent in Boston.
Oh yeah, there's just ping pong tables and foosball scattered all over the streets here.
That's exactly. So that's awesome. I love it. I love that kind of stuff. So Tim, you're the development director there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's a fancy title. I'm sure you've worked long and hard hours to work your way up to director. So tell us a bit about what it is that you do at this particular job, and what excites you about what you're doing right now.
At this particular job, well, because we're a small team, we're only about 5 people.
Okay.
For the development, there's a large design team and then a strategy team. We still do a lot of coding day to day, but the thing that's the most rewarding, I think, is making sure the folks on my team professionally develop in the ways that they want to, and they're assigned to the projects that they want to be assigned to. Because there's nothing worse than being in for lack of a better phrase, a code monkey position.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that these absolutely are not code monkey positions. One of the first things we did here was break down that artificial wall between designers and developers. There's this at least there used to be this mentality of, here's a PSD, just shut up and code it.
Yeah.
And it's just so unnecessary, and it causes so much back and forth. And you get your designs to the developer, and then they say like, oh well, this and this can't be done, and like, oh well, the client already signed off on it, so build it anyways.
Yeah.
So that's it's nice to be in a position where you could tear those walls down and say, like, that's not how it should be done. We should all be talking the whole time. We should speak the same language. We actually started doing development for designer sessions where I would teach the design team a very small thing about development, just so we can have conversations, not to make experts, but so somebody knows the importance of source order in a responsive design, or how the basics of a database work. And it's helped a ton.
That's cool. I mean, I would fill the programmer role. So I would be the programmer who would go in there and pick the brain of the UI guys and sort of share our stuff back and forth. So that's awesome. I really like that. That was something that tended to happen back when I worked full time in lunchrooms. So at the lunch table we'd have where I worked, we had catered lunches, which is really nice, and we'd sit down and just sort of we'd geek out with each other and share our. I remember one guy's name is Steve, who was our sort of UI guy. It was funny. There was one specific UI guy, and then there was 100 developers, which is definitely not the right ratio in my opinion. But anyway, so it's nice. It was nice to be able to share that knowledge back and forth. And that's what I'm doing now with this podcast. So for my audience, the people that listen, they have a strong coding background, but they're really trying to dip their toes into entrepreneurship. And and when I was working at this place, my 9 to 5 job as a programmer, I started spreading that knowledge too. I started, getting really excited about entrepreneurship, and I started learning things, and then I was picking the brains of other people who, outside of my comfort zone and other circles to learn about this, entrepreneurial type thing when I eventually quit my job. But that's where, the background that the audience has is in software as well as the entrepreneurial bug. So I want to dive into your sort of entrepreneurial bug, because I know that you've had some stuff in the past that you've done, as well as some projects coming up. So one thing is, you actually, was it a traditionally published book that you had written about JavaScript? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was called Learning JavaScript. It came out under the Pearson Publishing a couple of years ago. That was just wild experience, just cramming a 300-page book into 4 months of writing.
So I'm really interested in this. So this is a physical book that you go sort of to the bookstore and purchase and pick up for yourself in person?
It is one that I would go to the bookstore, stand next to, and recommend people purchase.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Because all I've done is done the the ebook route, but I've never gone traditional publishing. So for me, for my own little personal ways, my own personal knowledge I'd love to fill, and I'm sure the people listening would also love to know about, is how did you land that deal? How did you get a traditionally published book company or publisher or whatever it is to sort of sponsor you or whatever? Was there well, first of all, was there a process that you went through to get that? And two, did they give you what do they call it? Where they front you the cash to write the book, the advance? Did they give you a book advance? Yeah.
So I guess it started probably 6 years ago, really, the whole process. I went to a conference in Vancouver called Web Directions.
Okay.
And I met the founder of SitePoint.com, and I was talking to him at lunch, and I said, like, oh, I'd really like to start getting into writing. And I kind of hinted like, oh, I'd love to write a book. And he's like, haha, you're nobody. You're not writing a book for us. So I started writing articles for him. And over time, I think I wrote maybe 3 or 4 for SitePoint, and then moved over to Smashing Magazine, wrote some articles over there, and made some connections through Twitter. And I met this guy, Tom Ledbetter, who wrote the HTML5 Developers Cookbook for Pearson Publishing. And he was looking for tech editors for it. He put my name in for a potential, because I just knew him through Twitter. Pearson contacted me to do tech editing for the book. I said, sure, that'd be great. I've never had my name in a book before. I started doing that. They asked what other things could I possibly do a tech edit for, and I listed a bunch of topics that I was familiar with. JavaScript was one of them. And an opportunity came up where they wanted to write a beginner-level JavaScript book, and for some reason, they contacted me and said, like, hey, do you want to write this book that we're going to put out? And I'm like, well, sure,
yeah.
I'll do that. I'm going to have to learn JavaScript a little better.
Oh, nice. So basically what you're saying is, you dipped your toe into the right pond. You were doing, the article writing. So you said you were doing tech reviewing, or what was the term that you used for what it was that you did at the first place?
The very first thing was the articles for Smashing.
Right.
And actually one of the articles was about HTML5, and that was one of their big articles on HTML5, and I think that's how I connected with Tom to do the technical editing.
Technical editing, there we go. So that's what I don't know if I'm familiar with what technical editing is. Is that just you're going through the technical documents and editing them, or the technical parts of the book and editing them, or what?
The code, it's basically code reviews for
just
a book.
Code reviews, okay, just to make sure that the stuff going in the book is correct, type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's true. I made that boo-boo. When I released my first book, I got a horrible review from someone on Amazon because one of my code snippets were incorrect. And so yeah, that's definitely a lesson that you learn. You need to make sure that your code is correct, that you're teaching people. So
you miss one semicolon, somebody will point it out.
Of course, that is the pain and the misery that is working in the space that at least that I do. So most of my business is focused around teaching programming, specifically Java, and everything that goes around it. So yeah, I'm very well versed with the people who will correct you at every point, at every turn. But that's good too. So I found when I was creating my book, I was writing articles and publishing it on my blog, which those articles would later go into the book. but you have this sort of this layer built into it of people reviewing your stuff, because you're going to have the people, you know, look at it and point out all of your mistakes
Right.
on the blog. So then that sort of, you know, is your editing for the actual book itself. But, you know, that's when you're just going it alone, when you don't have someone like the Pearson company, you know, behind you. So so basically, you were able to land that deal just because you were, like I said, in the right places at the right time, you know, doing the right work and rubbing elbows with the correct people, and it just so happens that the opportunity, you know, something came of it. So that's awesome. Now, were you actually, you know, feel free to say no to answering this question, but were you paid to actually do the technical editing and the article writing and everything, or is that all sort of, you know, free work as a volunteer position?
Yeah, you do get paid. The
Okay.
the technical editing is not that much. I think it was, I want to say it was something like 300-400 to do the tech editing.
Okay.
It wasn't anything significant. The advance on the book was more significant. That was this is kind of funny because the initial advance that they offered me was something, I think it was somewhere around 10,000 for the advance. And the way the advance works is if your book doesn't sell enough to generate the royalties for that amount, you have to pay it back.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's really just like,
It's a
here,
loan.
we think you're going to earn this much money, but if you don't, you have to give it back to us. So what I asked them to do is actually cut the advance in half.
Okay.
So I only took 5 for that, and then as the royalties total up, when they go past that $5,000 mark, then you start getting checks.
Nice. Okay. Now, are you able to negotiate the royalty rate that you get if you were to drop the advance as well, or did you not try to do that at all?
I didn't try to do that.
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to write the book. And,
Exactly.
from what I understood, talking to other people, it was a fairly standard royalty rate.
Okay. Beautiful. So since you've done that, you said, so that was published back. Well, when was that you published that book?
It was probably two or 2.5 years ago at this point.
2 or 2.5. Yeah, because I think I remember saying that my book was published around the same time. Okay, so that's not too long ago then. So obviously, I'm assuming you've managed to make enough sales from the book to be able to pay off that initial advance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not too much beyond that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But fair enough. Now, it's available
Yeah.
on Amazon as well, correct?
correct.
Now, do you have any sort of control over the, you know, pricing through the book itself or on Amazon, or any deals that you do through Amazon or any other publishing type of procedure? Is that all in their hands?
That's totally in their hands.
Okay, so that's interesting. So this is good. This is just, like I said, this is more of a, for my own sake, for learning how this goes, because I'm obviously interested in doing a traditional published book as well. But because I just written mine through it on Amazon. I've done 2 now, and it's it's, what is it? I get the recurring royalties. They started off well. I hit the point where I was making like $1,000 a month, which was great. But it tends to sort of taper off as you get going, and if you don't get good reviews, because like I said, I sort of got hammered at the beginning with bad reviews because I just didn't put the right amount of effort into editing, which is unfortunate. So I just couldn't recover from that, so my sales started dropping and whatnot. So that was a big lesson for everyone out there who wants to publish their own book through Amazon. Make sure that you get yourself an editor, get the second or third set of eyes going through the stuff and making sure you shore up your typos and any other mishaps and anything that could piss someone off. You just want to make sure you smooth out those rough edges, because it's worth it. It's worth the effort.
Yeah, I would say even get a technical editor, or get a couple technical editors, and even get a copy editor.
Okay.
Or 2.
Yeah. Now a technical editor, would that be just someone specific to a book that relates to a technical subject, or is tech editor like a broad sort of job for that could be applied to any book in any genre?
I've only heard it in the technical books, but
Okay.
I imagine it's anybody who's an expert in that specific field versus a grammar expert. General
Exactly,
grammar.
yeah. So the running joke there, and I don't know if I mentioned this before on the podcast, but I'm a bit of a grammar Nazi myself. So, and Carter, my co-host, who's not here right now, he's completely the opposite. So we're always battling back and forth. I'm always correcting him here and there, and it pisses him off. So that's fun. So I'm decent with the grammar, but yeah, obviously it's good to have a second set of eyes. Now the other part that interested me from what you were saying about the book and the fact that you were able to write it before you were able to actually write it, you said that you had made a connection through Twitter. So can you talk a little bit more about Twitter, obviously. We haven't talked about that yet on the podcast, and you know, obviously you were able to get onto this show because of your Twitter skills. So lay it on us. Let's hear some of the tips that you have for you know, landing a book deal like you did with your Twitter skills.
So landing a book deal on Twitter by Tim Wright.
That's right.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to marketing yourself, but even though it's kind of a almost a swear word or swear phrase in our industry of marketing yourself, but it's really just connecting with people and not being a jerk. And when I first started out on Twitter, I don't know, it was a long time ago at this point, but trying to get into the community a little more, I would just go to Twitter search, type in CSS, see if anyone has a question, and just start talking to them, maybe help them out with their question. Reaching out to people. When I'm hosting my own podcast, I reach out to people on Twitter all the time, and everyone's just super open about that stuff.
So for me, when I first started off, I started off my sort of entrepreneurial journey back in 2012, late 2012. And believe it or not, even being a tech guy like I am with a software background, I didn't have a Twitter account, because to me, Twitter was, you know, my naive view of it was, this is where people go and post random stuff about their day and how they're feeling, what they're eating. And that's what was ingrained and drilled into my brain. And I just didn't reach out. I didn't try, you know, creating an account. I didn't try, you know, experimenting with it. I didn't try anything until I started learning more about what Twitter was. And once I had it explained to me that Twitter is a search engine, that you can use it as a search engine, then the light bulb went off. So just like you said, you were searching for CSS on Twitter. You can actually, and you know, I'm speaking to a lot of people who are already familiar with this, but for those of you who are not familiar with this, you can type in something like CSS or even Java, which is what I was interested in, or JavaScript or whatever, and you can see the conversations that people are having on Twitter in the past, you know, even, you know, last 5 minutes ago, or 10 hours ago, or, you know, 7 days ago, or can you go back forever, more or less? I'm not exactly sure. I haven't tried going back for, you know, ages and ages, but you can do this, and you can sort of, you know, strategically insert yourself into that conversation. You can sort of, I don't know, can you directly reply to the people who are you know, saying something about CSS, for example? Like, how would you do that if someone said, you know, they had a question about CSS or they were complaining about it? Would you just reply right to them?
Yeah, just reply right to them. And it's, you know, when you get into the article writing, when I was doing the smashing articles, if somebody leaves a comment or something that you don't want to reply on smashing for some reason, you can use Twitter to engage them. There's a lot of paths to engage different people in the community.
So, and I'm sure that's proved to be extremely useful. So the example with Tim and myself is that you'd found us through New and Noteworthy, I believe is what you said.
Yep.
So you found us through New and Noteworthy. I'm assuming you looked up the Coder Startup on Twitter and found the account.
Yep. The little good old-fashioned stalking.
Exactly. That's the way it goes. And then you just, you know, reached out to us, and I forget what it was, what your message was, but I think you just said something like, I like the show, or an episode that you listened to, you'd made mention to an episode. And then that sort of piqued my interest, because I said, oh, interesting, there's a listener out there reaching out. So I decided to connect, and we had a little bit of a chit chat, and sure enough, here you are on the episode, which is really, like I said, more or less our first guest, which is pretty cool. So
it's a dream come true.
It's a dream come true, really. So I mean, that's made possible through, like he was talking about, Tim's talking about the techniques, just, you know, going and searching in the search bar, and or obviously looking up you know, someone's actual brand name that they're using, like Coder Startup. You can find those people on Twitter and just directly interact with them without having to actually, you know, connect to the two accounts together. So it's not like Facebook where you need to actually be connected, you know, friends type of thing. You can just reach out to random strangers, like you said, stalking. So any other cool things that you do on Twitter like that? Do you have any other tips for people who might not be familiar with how to use Twitter?
A lot of it's just not being shy. Like I'm generally a fairly reserved person, but you know, when you have these goals to reach out and meet people and contribute to the community, it's really, I don't even call it like ripping a Band-Aid off, but it's just it's so painless to just send someone a message and say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. I'd love to help out or contribute.
Exactly. Now, is that something? This is where the transparency comes out in the episode. Is this something that you do on a regular basis with a whole bunch of podcasts to sort of get the brand name or yourself, do the marketing type of thing? Is this what you do on a regular basis?
Not really. Not for. I don't reach out to many other podcasts. I mean, sometimes we do crossover shows, but beyond that, if I hear an episode like I think it was the.
Affiliate.
What was it? The affiliate marketing episode that you did, and it was just so aligned with how I like to do things. Just really open and transparent. And here's what I do. Here's where I messed up. Here's just everything. And I hope you learn from it. I will definitely reach out to something like that. It's not. I wouldn't. I think it crosses the line into almost sleazy if you do it over and over again.
Yeah. Well,
like
I mean,
it's just so self-serving if you keep doing it and just like, oh, I don't care. I'll just whatever, and just to put your name out there.
Right. I think there is a line. So this is the talk about the dirty word, the marketing word. So for me, when I started, I didn't know anything about marketing whatsoever. I didn't know anything about building an email list. I didn't know anything about anything when it comes to marketing, because like I said, I had just a coding background, right? I was just this random coder who was trying to start a business, which is scary. But marketing is it's a necessary evil when it comes to growing a business. You need to do it, otherwise you're unless you have even if you had an amazing product. I was going to say, even if you had you released this amazing product and you were able to grow an audience organically without ever talking about that particular app, let's say. I don't know if that ever happens anymore. I don't think that you can really get through the noise out there without actually actively marketing yourself, your brand, your company, or what have you. I think it's mandatory. And I don't know if you can agree with that or not, because I believe you have a marketing. Did you get a marketing degree? Is that what you have?
Yeah, base marketing degree. Yeah,
base marketing degree. So would you agree with that assessment of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do the best. You can build the best application that solves everyone in the world's problem, but if nobody knows about it, they're not going to use it. Yeah,
and I mean, this is, this might, so to me right now, having this conversation, I'm sure with you as well, Tim, this is an obvious thing. It's obvious that you need to market. But back when I started, I knew about marketing, but I didn't think I really needed to do that. I didn't think I needed to market. I had created 2 apps on the iPhone. Doesn't matter what the apps were, but I thought I could just create these apps. They were great apps. They were useful to me. They were useful to the people that I was working with at my job. So I released it, and I sat back and I said, oh my God, this is going to be great. I'm going to make so much money. And I think, so one was a free app that had built-in advertising, and the other was a paid app, because I wanted to cover both my bases and see which one did better. And I think overall, the profit, I don't think there was a profit now that I think about it, because with Apple creating an iPhone app, you need to pay them $100 a year to have the privilege of releasing apps on their device. So I think I didn't even make $99 when you put the 2 apps together. So I ended up having a loss for that, all those hard months of work that I put into learning language and actually releasing these things. So you need to market. There's no such thing anymore as just releasing it on a platform and making a whole lot of money. Now I can caveat that with, I actually did well with Amazon. That's why I was touching on Amazon with your ebook earlier. When I released my stuff on Amazon, it did kind of have this organic growth, but that was because I was leveraging the Kindle. What's it called? They have their publishing, Kindle Select. There we go. They have a Kindle Select program where you can give away your book for free for 5 days, which sounds counterintuitive, but give it away for free for 5 days, and Amazon does a huge job of promoting it on your behalf. And then for the next 85 days or whatever, you need to only sell your book on Amazon. So I don't think you can do that through a traditionally published book, which might be why. I'm assuming you didn't try going through that program if you were familiar with it at all. I'm assuming
I didn't.
Yeah, I'm assuming
but
not.
I mean, that's the marketing part of it. They're just someone else is doing it.
Someone else is doing it, exactly. That's the trade-off with traditionally published books. That's what you're essentially paying for is someone else to do that grunt work for you. but yeah, that's something that helped me out for growing the sales organically, which was nice. So there is such thing as quote unquote free marketing, but it's more along the lines of, yeah, you have to give your stuff away for free with Amazon and be exclusive to them for 90 days. So, whether or not that's free, I don't know, but it's certainly a good trade-off if you have no marketing skills. So.
But that the reference to the App Store,
yeah,
there was the huge debate for a long time of what's the benefit of making an app versus mobile website, or from many years ago, and one of the big benefits was the marketing from the App Store. But you're right, you can't just throw it up there.
No,
it's not just going to appear. It's like a podcast. You put a podcast in iTunes, it's going to get buried. It's not going to jump to the top of the list.
Yeah, and there's certain things. So podcast, I would say that the app market for the iPhone especially is extremely saturated now. But I would say podcasts, they are becoming more and more saturated. But I think the numbers from last I heard, there's something like X number of billions of blogs out there, but the podcasts are still hovering around 200,000 or 300,000. English podcasts, I should say. I think that was the last time I looked at that. Which really, if you think about it, compared to blogs, it might even be trillions of blogs at this point. It's a drop in the bucket when it comes to podcasting. Right. So that's why I like this medium, right? It's a medium that's being picked up by the masses. Now that podcasts apps are being built right into the car consoles now. I think the projection was that by 2021 or something, 100% of the cars coming off the lots will have podcasting built into the consoles inside the cars. So that's very, very big growth potential for the podcast platform, which is very exciting. Again, don't quote me on those years. This is obviously, I'm pulling from fuzzy memory, but I know that there is a projection out there that it's going to be hitting 100% of the cars coming off the lot, which is just incredible. So, but that's a great place to go because it's not yet too saturated. Obviously talking about the podcasting market. So, all right, cool. Do you have, before I move on, you have anything to add to that discussion before we kick it on?
I think that was pretty robust.
That was pretty robust. So now you are. Let me go and click on the old computer here. You have a lot going on. So you're a published author. You're working at. You mentioned it once, but I'll mention it again. Fresh Tilled Soil. I'm assuming it's freshtilledsoil.com.
It is.
Okay, that's your app development, UI UX type company. You're also are you hosting or co-hosting something called the Dirt Show?
Yes, host. Well, I call it co-hosting, but
co-hosting.
Yeah. We'll say co-hosting.
We'll say co-hosting. So you are a co-host of the Dirt Show. Is it called the Dirt Show or just the Dirt?
Just the Dirt. We couldn't get the Dirt Twitter handle.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because I'm looking at the Dirt Show. So it's called The Dirt, and this is where I'm assuming you geek out and you share your passion about the web and UX and stuff like that and tech.
Yep, we do 3-episode chunked series. We did a recent one on creating a successful product and dumped it into 3 buckets: design, marketing, and funding.
Nice.
We do stuff like that. It's a really education show, I would say.
Nice. And it's is it more topic based, or do you do a lot of interviews, or because you mentioned some cross show stuff there going on?
Yeah, so every once in a while we'll do a crossover show, but most of the time we'll identify a series that we want to do, like the creating a successful product.
Okay.
We'll break it into buckets, and then we'll try and find a guest to represent each of those topics.
Nice. Okay, so you do seek out experts and do interviews and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, the crossover show is what I'm interested in, because this is something that I stumbled upon when I first started listening to podcasts, and it's actually something I haven't done yet. So it's an interesting sort of technique. I'm assuming what you mean by that is you're bringing in a host or something like that of another podcast and sort of interviewing them on your show. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. So if our 2 shows did a crossover, we would decide on a topic. We would have our hosts on each end, have a normal show, and then we would just both release the episode under our own
brand name.
Under our own titles, yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's exactly, I think, what happened with. I'm really big into the entrepreneurial podcast scene, and I think it was the summer. I forget what they specifically called it. It was like the summer marketing mashup or something like that. And it was, you know, a bunch of different podcast hosts. I don't know if you've heard of these people like Pat Flynn. Who the heck was it that they all? Was it Tim? It was another Tim that came from. I forget now. Then there was a TMBA show, their tropical lifestyle business podcast. It was like a conglomerate of 5 different shows, and they were on each other's show all at the same time, type of thing. So they did this sort of, you know, 5 different hosts talking about one specific topic, and then I guess they all released that particular episode that they recorded on each of their own shows with their own branding. And it's just a fantastic way to get the word out and leverage other people's audiences. So it's
been great.
Yeah, I think that that's how I found all the 4 other shows that I was talking about. Maybe it was 3 because I think I was already listening to one of them. But I had heard about these guys. They were talking with, you know, Pat Flynn is who sort of was my mentor and someone who I found early on and really latched onto and really resonated with. You know, he was talking to these other guys and he was respecting these other guys, and I said, well, if Pat Flynn likes these guys, then I should listen to their shows too. And then, you know, that helps me out because I find other shows to listen to, you know, gain knowledge from, and they benefit from, you know, getting new listeners. So, you know, if you think about it, you know, the person with the biggest audience has the most to give in that scenario. So when you did this, which side of the equation were you on? Were you on the one with a huge audience, or were you sort of piggybacking on someone else's?
Well, we've done it 3 times now.
Okay.
We did a crossover show with a podcast called Hustle, which is a product design or mobile product design podcast. We did one with BizCraft, which is, they have a lot more listeners than we do. And we did one with UX Podcast. I think with Hustle, we probably had the bigger audience. With UX Podcast, we're probably somewhere around the same. And then BizCraft just has a lot more listeners than we do.
Right.
So we've been kind of on both sides of it.
So when you look at, do you have access? Do you look at your metrics and are obsessed with your metrics with podcast downloads and stuff like that?
Embarrassingly so.
Okay, so you can probably confidently answer this question then. So when you look at those episodes that you released specifically, were you seeing that huge vertical spike in downloads for those episodes, or?
We weren't, because they were like, our listeners would download the crossover episode from our feed, and the other podcasts listeners would download it from their feed.
Good point.
So we wouldn't see a big spike, but moving forward, we would see slightly higher numbers as we got some listeners from other shows.
Okay, so you would see the effect, the bleeding effect there would actually, you know, happen. I'm assuming that works best. That strategy works best when you are talking to other podcast hosts that touch on a topic that your audience would be interested in, right? So I'm assuming there was obviously a crossover there of, were you mostly talking about, I forget now if you said it, I have such a horrible memory. If you're talking about like UX type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, they're usually UX centered because it's the common ground between the shows. We actually have some requests. When we did the BizCraft crossover, one of our listeners requested that we do that crossover episode.
Oh.
Because he listened to both shows and really liked them. And I don't know, just I guess wanted to listen to one less show that week.
So there you go. You consolidate your efforts there. So that's pretty smart. So that's cool. I mean, to have your audience. I mean, I don't know. The age that we live in is always so cool to me, that you can have someone reach out to you that, you know, when you're a podcaster, you know, you're talking towards a microphone, normally maybe to someone else, maybe to 2 other people, or maybe to no one else, maybe just yourself. And that's it. That's the extent of the experience that we have as podcast hosts. But then on the other end of it, there are, you know, thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people out there who are downloading and listening to these episodes for, you know, like we've been going for about 30 minutes now, you know, for 30, 40, you know, 60 minutes at a time. It's just incredible that there's not only that kind of effect, but that these people will in turn reach back out to you and contact you through, like we're talking about, Twitter or Facebook or email or what have you, and make a request like that. That is so incredible. I love that.
I love it. And I mean, it kind of goes back to the not being shy on Twitter thing.
Yeah.
You know, you download the show, you listen to it, you maybe, I know when I first started listening to podcasts, I was listening to something like something NPR would host, and I would feel like, oh, I who am I? I can't contact these people. They're not going to care. But they do. Well, maybe they don't, but I do as a host. I love hearing from them, and because we don't get that many requests, because I think that's the mindset people have. It's just kind of passive listening, and you can't interact, but you totally can, and your voice is heard immediately.
It is, absolutely, especially through the mediums like Twitter and stuff. Email might be a little bit slower, but it's incredible. And I know, like, if I right now, I mean, we're living proof of it right now. You reach out to me on Twitter, boom, immediately, response, and now we're doing an interview. So if you're out there listening to the Coder Startup and you have an idea for a show, or you just want to ask a question or what have you, normally we direct you to the blog itself, coderstartup.com. But obviously you can use whatever means you have available to you at your disposal. Reach out on Twitter and say hi, at Coder Startup, make it happen. Who knows where the future will bring us there. So before we wrap things up, let me dig in a little bit deeper here into who this Tim fellow is that we're talking to. You also run something called, where was it? The Fresh Boston. So that's a meetup or something, a monthly or quarterly meetup.
Yeah, Refresh Boston. It's a monthly meetup. It's a nationwide movement. It's called Refreshing Cities.
Okay.
And I forget how many members there are right now. It's over 20 cities probably.
Nice.
And Boston is the chapter that I recently took over.
Okay. Now so you took it over. So this wasn't something that you sort of founded. This is something that you just sort of put your hat in there in the ring and are taking the reins and running the thing, right, type of thing.
Yeah, it was around for about 7 years, and the actual founder of the specific chapter, Patrick Haney, ended up moving to Buffalo, and I noticed that
that's unfortunate.
The chapter didn't.
Sorry,
the chapter hadn't done anything for a few months, and I contacted him and I said, like, hey, I noticed this hasn't been going on for a while. Would you mind if I took it over?
Nice.
And he's like, yeah, that would be great. So he just kind of handed over the reins, and it opened him up to starting Refresh Buffalo.
So you just sort of reached out and offered your services, and there you go. It worked. You just put yourself out there. So that's obviously a recurring theme in your life. So that's pretty nice to point out. Now, the actual event itself is centered around what? Is it the same sort of thing? You talk about techie type stuff and geek out with other people and teach, or what's the premise of it?
Yeah, it's really like a meetup. We'll have lectures typically, or workshops or something surrounded around web design, development, UX stuff.
Okay. And what would you say is the number one takeaway that you get from that, in terms of being, if you're thinking about about it in selfish terms, what is it that you get out of this, running this and putting all this work and effort into? What's the big ROI with this particular thing?
I don't know. I guess I guess it does technically gets my name out there more, even though I really don't stand in front of the crowd that often. Maybe once every 3 or 4 months I'll stand in front of everybody and say something. It makes me feel good to give back to the community, because we're in, the web development design community takes so much. Not to say anything against anyone listening who is technically taking right now, but there's libraries and frameworks and everything that we use in this really rich culture of sharing in the open source community, and I feel like if some people don't give back, it'll stop.
Interesting.
So this is one of the ways that I feel I can give back a little.
Okay, so now, like, what was going through my head there was, I was assuming that it would be connections. It would be the connections that you would make within this thing, with people who, who knows? I mean, connections you could get for perhaps another, I don't know, obviously this doesn't apply to you specifically at this moment, but maybe another job opportunity could come of it. Someone, runs a company here or knows someone who runs a company there and could, really be impressed by you and say, hey, why don't you jump on board my ship, and so on and so forth, or maybe someone who wants to start up their own business or something, who's reaching out to you now because you're sort of the leader of that group, and they would say, do you know anyone that would want to join up with me and help me create my product, or whatever, right? I think that you would have a lot of that going on. Has that happened to you yet?
Yeah, that does happen. That actually happens to a lot of the attendees as well.
Oh, nice.
It's a great networking opportunity
Exactly.
for everybody.
Now that's somewhere that I definitely I need to work on that personally. So I've really only get out of the house. So I live in Toronto, Canada. There's not a whole heck of a lot going on. I don't want to say in Canada, but in my sort of area where I specifically live, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. But so I could get out there and I could go to more conferences, but a lot of the conferences that are really interesting to me are happening in places like San Diego. Even I'm sure Boston has a bunch, and well, Boulder was one that I actually attended, and all the cool cities, maybe Seattle. There's a lot going on in all these U.S. cities that it's just too expensive for me to fly out and then stay there and international travel and all that stuff. So it's something that I need to work on, but I think it would be a huge ROI for someone who could go and put themselves out there and like you said, just make the leap and just try it once. That's always my rule. Try something once that you haven't tried before. If you don't like it, if it's a horrible experience, then fine. At least you say you can say you tried. But I mean, more times than not, I'm sure you're going to really enjoy the process. You're going to make amazing connections with the people you meet there, so long as you put yourself out there. And who knows the future opportunities that you're going to get from these things. So
yeah,
I mean,
I would say that definitely don't be the guy who goes to the event and hands out business cards.
Yeah, no.
There's always that person with like a stack of 50 and their goal is to have 0 at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You always forget that guy because you throw his card away.
Yes,
or
you
her
do.
card away. But when I'm the same way. I really don't network that often, and I have to force myself to do it. So that's something that Refresh Boston has helped me a lot with. Is that I don't actually have to go to the events and awkwardly network. I'm organizing the event,
Right.
and people will recognize me, and they'll come up to me and network. So it's kind of a really hard way to avoid networking.
That's a really good way of putting it, because I love that actually, because that's probably our, I remember reading this. It's something like 95% of the population would identify themselves as shy. So it's like if you're in a room with 100 people, 94 of your peers in there are also probably just as shy as you are and just as hesitant to want to reach out to other people. So if what better way to put yourself in that position than to be someone who's recognized as the leader or as a head of the event or something, where you are just going to be approached. So I think it's a lot easier to participate in a conversation if someone else initiates it. I'm assuming that's the effect that you're seeing there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would say, if you make one or two really solid connections at one of these meetups, it's totally worth it.
For sure. And I mean, you don't even have to do something like, look for someone who has an established platform already, like something like you just call the Refresh cities.
Refresh.
Refresh, yeah. You don't have to go, as far as to, go for something big like that. You can even go to somewhere like, Meetup? Is it meetup.com?
Yep.
Yeah, meetup.com. And I think it's, simple to just start your own meetup in your own community, in your own city or whatever, for whatever topic you're most enthusiastic about. I don't know why I haven't done that yet. Just start up, this Toronto area entrepreneurs, whatever, where we can sort of rub elbows and, chit chat over a lunch or a dinner or just drinks. It's fun. It's fun to socialize. We are social beings. As programmers, we often fight that, but I think we really will benefit from pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone, because every good thing that's ever happened to me in my life has happened when I push myself outside of my comfort zone. So I love it.
Yep. Yeah, I always say that I'm actually comfortable when I'm slightly uncomfortable.
Oh, nice. Very good. So now, with yourself, Tim, you have, let's talk about one last thing. You mentioned, let me go back to I call it my research, but it's just my Twitter feed. You had mentioned something, I don't know if you want to talk about it at all, but you mentioned a couple things actually that you're working on in the future, thinking about starting up with respect to some software projects. Do you want to touch on those before we end?
I can. So we're with the podcast, we found it really difficult to manage guests.
Nice.
And we've started building an application to try and solve that.
Okay.
So that's in the really early stages. There's not even a login system for it yet. It's actually just wide open. I forgot the password protected this morning when I pushed it up to the server. But that's one thing working on, and another side project is gearingthemarket.com, which was an investment algorithm that I came up with that I really can't put any more disclaimers on. I can't put enough disclaimers on it. But it was I started in doing some personal investing, and as a a coder, I needed a formula to try and stop. I needed some sort of a formula to figure out why I was losing so much money.
Yeah.
So I came up with it. It was in a spreadsheet in Google Docs, and I was like, this is taking me forever to fill out this document. So I'm just gonna pull in some NASDAQ data and put in, basically programmatically build out this sheet and come out with a score. And if the score is high, I'll invest. If it's low, I won't.
Wow, very good.
And I thought to myself, I can keep this to myself, but what's really the point of that? Because I'm never going to charge for it, because I can't. I probably legally can't charge for it. So I just put it up, and it's been up there ever since.
Very cool. So now that is available at gearingthemarket.com. So I guess if you are someone who is interested in investing and stuff like that, I guess you can check it out. Is that an easy? You just sort of, is there a sign up and a registration type thing and whatnot, or is it completely wide open, or how does that work?
There is a sign up, but it's also wide open. You can go and just search, or if you want to save any portfolios, you can sign in.
Oh, very cool. So now, so this thing that's in early development it's interesting to me for two reasons. One, I'm sure it's a problem that it'll help solve for me, and two, I have a really interesting audience, a potential audience for you, a big audience that I'm sure you'd be interested in. I'm not sure if I've touched on it before briefly, but I think you might be interested in it. So the product that you're building, it helps podcast hosts manage the actual process of bringing on guests. Does it help them find guests as well as manage the guests that you have already come in, or?
It doesn't help with that. It's just there's the guest management portion of it, and there's the episode management portion of it. And then after the guests are booked, they tie together.
Okay, beautiful. Because there's something that I'm part of. I talked about John Lee Dumas before. I don't know if you've done any research on him after our original talk, but John Lee Dumas has probably the biggest community of podcasters that exists today. And I forget how many members it is at the moment. It's probably over 2,000 members strong, but it's nothing but podcast hosts in this group. So to me, I don't know what sort of market research you've done already, and if you found a group like that yet. Okay, 0. For those of you who are not seeing this in the video, he's holding up the 0 number. So yeah, there's a group of probably, and it's growing every single day. So it's probably almost 2,000 people in this group. So this is where the beauty of networking comes in handy. What I can do is I can put you in touch with John, because he's a good buddy of mine, and you guys can talk when you're more comfortable with showing the product, because I'm sure, I don't know if you're in MVP stage yet, probably not.
Not even quite there yet.
No, but I mean, it's definitely a problem that needs to be solved. It's definitely, now how would you monetize that? Is that going to be, a free base with ads? Is that going to be paid membership type, or is this just not even something you've thought about yet?
Well, I've been actually working on a theory of mine that there's not much money to be made in software.
Okay.
Like scalable money. Right. Because everything that I've seen has to do with either loading up with ads and kind of degrading the experience, or running some sort of a service model with support, and you have to add people to scale. So I would like to actually just give it away. I would like to package it up as an open source product like WordPress and just give it away. Well,
I'm sure people will love that inside the community, but I can for sure put you in touch with him and his community, because it's amazing. I'm in there every day. I see it filling up my my Facebook feed, and the talent in that group is just incredible. So I think that would be a great fit, and I think they would all hold me up high on all their shoulders and cheer as I bring in someone who has a product that's free that can solve this problem. So I'm sure they would love that. So awesome, man, awesome. So let's end with how people can get in touch with you, if you want to share that. So if they have any questions, they can get in touch with you and sort of pick your brain. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can shoot me a message on Twitter @CSSKarma.
at CSS Karma with a K. I'm assuming that's how you spell karma. Very good. So that's your preferred method. So have a, let me just bring that up. Yeah, shoot him a message, Tim Wright at CSS Karma. If you have any questions, let him know. Otherwise, you can always go to the show notes, which I believe this is, I didn't say, I think this is episode number 14 now. So you can go to coderstartup.com/14, and that'll redirect you to the show notes, and you can always leave a comment at the bottom. I would love to field and answer any questions that you may have about business and entrepreneurship. So thank you so much, Tim, for sticking it out for almost an hour now. I didn't realize it was going to go for this long. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can connect again sometime soon, and I can help you out with your projects.
It's great. Thanks so much for having me.
Cool, Tim. Take care, man.